The morning rush at Cole Enterprises was always the same. The sound of polished shoes clicking against marble floors echoed in the grand lobby. Suits moved quickly, coffee cups in hand, eyes fixed on phones or laptops. Nobody slowed down, except for one man. Adrian Cole, the CEO himself, was stepping out of the elevator after a meeting that had ended earlier than expected. At 42, he was a man who carried authority with every step. His dark suit was sharp, his tie perfectly straight, and his expression calm but unreadable. People often said he had the kind of presence that made an entire room stand taller. But today, someone much smaller would stop him in his tracks. It happened just as he crossed the lobby, heading for the revolving glass doors. A small figure stood. In his way, a little girl, no more than 7 or 8, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. Her hair was tied into 2 uneven braids, and her pink dress had a faint tear at the hem. She didn't look like she belonged in this sea of business professionals. At first, Adrian thought she must be lost. He glanced around for a parent or a security guard, but she was alone. The little girl took a nervous step forward, her fingers squeezing the teddy bear tighter. "Sir," her voice was soft, almost drowned out by the lobby noise. Adrian stopped walking and bent slightly to hear her better. "Yes?" Her eyes, big and round, looked up at him with an intensity that made him forget about the meeting he was supposed to prepare for. There was no hesitation in her next words, only an odd mixture of hope and desperation. "Could you pretend to be my daddy? Just for one day?" For a moment, the world around Adrian seemed to pause. The chatter, the footsteps, the sound of the revolving door, everything faded into the background. He simply stared at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" he asked, his voice gentle but careful. The girl shifted from one foot to the other. "I need someone to come to my school tomorrow. It's family day. Everyone's daddy is coming except me." She swallowed hard, her small shoulders trembling just a little. "My mummy works all the time. And I never met my real dad. So I thought, maybe you could help me. Just for tomorrow." Adrian straightened slowly, his mind racing. He had been asked for many strange things in his career. Last-minute mergers, charity donations, even celebrity endorsements. But never this. "Where's your mother?" he asked, scanning the lobby again. "She's at work. She told me to wait here for her after school, but—" She hesitated, glancing down at her shoes before looking back up. "I thought I should ask you before she comes, because if I ask her, she'll just say no." Something about her honesty made him pause. This was not the kind of request you could brush off with a polite excuse. Yet, part of him wanted to. He wasn't a father, had no experience with children, and tomorrow's schedule was already full. But then he noticed something. Her eyes, a deep shade of brown, were filled with hope, but beneath that, there was a quiet sadness. It was the kind of sadness you didn't often see in children, the kind that came from getting used to disappointment. "Why me?" Adrian finally asked. "You don't know me." She bit her lip. "Because you look like you know how to stand tall. And when you talk, people listen. I think that's what daddies do." For the first time that morning, Adrian felt his composure slip. Something inside him, a place he rarely visited, stirred at her words. It was strange to be seen like that by a child who had never met him before. "I don't think that's a good idea," he began carefully. But the moment he saw her expression fall, the words caught in his throat. Her small shoulders slumped, and she hugged her teddy tighter as if to protect herself from yet another rejection. "Okay," she said softly, already turning to walk toward a bench by the wall. Adrian stood there watching her, Something told him to let it go. This wasn't his problem. But another part of him, quieter yet stronger, whispered that maybe it was. He had the resources, the time, if he chose to make it, and perhaps, for this little girl, just one day could mean everything. As she sat on the bench, swinging her feet, he took a slow breath and walked over. "What's your name?" She looked up, surprised. "Lily." "Well, Lily," he said, crouching down to her level. "Tell me more about this family day." Her face lit up a little, the sadness easing. "It's tomorrow afternoon. We play games, and the daddies read stories, and then we all have snacks together. I've never been in the games because, well, you know." She glanced away for a second, then smiled faintly. "But if you came, maybe I could join this time." Adrian studied her for a long moment. She wasn't asking for money or gifts or anything complicated. She was asking for time, something that, for him, was both rare and valuable. "All right," he heard himself say before his mind could catch up. Just for one day. Her smile bloomed instantly, brighter than anything he'd seen in a long while. She didn't say thank you right away. Instead, she threw her tiny arms around his neck in a quick, awkward hug, and in that moment, in the middle of a busy corporate lobby, the CEO of Cole Enterprises realized that sometimes the smallest voices could make the biggest demands on your heart. The next morning, Adrian Cole found himself thinking about the strange encounter more than he expected. He had intended to push it aside, focus on his work, and let life continue as it always did. Meetings, contracts, business deals. But Lily's small voice asking him to be her father, just for one day, kept echoing in his mind. He arrived at the office earlier than usual. The building was quiet, with only the security guard and a few cleaning staff moving around. He poured himself a cup of black coffee and tried to read through a file on an upcoming investment project. But the words blurred, replaced by the image of a little girl holding a worn teddy bear. He didn't understand why it bothered him so much. He had no children of his own, no close family to speak of, and very little patience for things that weren't in his schedule. Yet, there was something about the way Lily had looked at him, as if she truly believed he could fix something for her, that stirred something in him. Just before lunch, Adrian found himself in the lobby again, hoping, though he didn't, admit it to himself, that she might appear. And she did. Lily came in quietly, walking through the revolving doors with her school bag bouncing at her side. Her braids were messier today, and there was a faint smudge of dirt on her cheek. She spotted him almost instantly, and her face lit up like someone had switched on a light. "You came," she said, hurrying toward him. Adrian smiled faintly. "I work here, remember?" "Yes, but—" She tilted her head. "I didn't think you'd be here at this time." He gestured toward one of the couches near the window. "Come on, let's sit for a moment." They settled into the corner of the lobby, away from the constant movement of staff. Lily placed her teddy bear on her lap, smoothing its ears, while Adrian leaned back, studying her. "So," he began, "tell me more about why this family day is so important to you." Lily's fingers fidgeted with the teddy's arm. "It's important because it's the only time we get to show our parents what we've learned. We sing songs, do little plays, and have games where the kids and their parents are partners. Everyone talks about it for weeks before it happens, everyone except me." Her voice dropped slightly on those last words. Adrian stayed quiet, letting her speak. "The first year I didn't mind. I thought maybe it wasn't a big deal. But then I saw how the other kids laughed with their daddies, and how the teachers clapped for them. I felt invisible. The second year I stayed home. I told my mom I was sick, but I wasn't. I just didn't want to sit alone again while everyone else played." She took a deep breath, her small hands tightening around the teddy bear. "This year, I decided I didn't want to hide. I thought maybe if I asked the right person, they might say yes. Adrian leaned forward slightly. And you thought I was the right person? Yes. She nodded without hesitation. You looked like someone who doesn't say yes very often, but when you do, you mean it. That caught him off guard. He was used to being described as strict, demanding, or difficult to please, but never like that. Does your mother know you asked me? He asked. Lily shook her head quickly. No, she would be upset. Not because she doesn't want me to be happy, but because she thinks it's better if I don't expect too much from people. She says, when you expect less, you get hurt less. Adrian's chest tightened at those words. They were too heavy for someone her age. I see, he said quietly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, casting warm light on the marble floor. Adrian watched her trace small patterns on her, teddy bear's fur, and he felt the weight of a decision pressing on him. He had built his entire life around control, controlling his time, his business, his emotions. But this was different. This was about stepping into a role he had never prepared for, even if just for one afternoon. What happens at the event? He asked finally. Lily's eyes brightened a little. First, we sing a song for the parents. Then we do small games like relay races or building towers with blocks. After that, there's story time. The daddies and mummies take turns reading books. At the end, we have snacks together. The school takes pictures for the bulletin board. She smiled shyly. It's nice, if you're not alone. Adrian could almost picture it. The cheerful chaos of children, the laughter, the proud, parents clapping. And somewhere in that crowd, Lily would be standing a little taller because she wasn't alone this time. He let out a slow breath. All right, Lily, I'll come tomorrow, but only if your mother agrees. Her smile wavered. She might say no. Then we'll ask her together, he said firmly. If this is important to you, we should be honest about it. Lily studied his face for a moment as if weighing whether she could trust him with this plan. Finally, she nodded. Okay, we'll ask her. When her mother arrived later that afternoon, a tired-looking woman in a plain blue uniform, Lily ran to her and explained everything in one quick breath. Her mother's eyes moved from Lily to Adrian, clearly surprised. You're the CEO of this building, aren't you? She asked, her voice cautious. Yes, Adrian replied simply. And your daughter asked me for a favor. She wants me to attend her school's family day tomorrow. I told her it would be fine only if you agreed. Her mother hesitated, glancing at Lily, who was looking at her with pleading eyes. After a long pause, she sighed. If you're sure you want to, I suppose it's all right, but it's just for tomorrow. Adrian nodded. Just for tomorrow. But as he watched Lily beam with joy, hugging her mother tightly, he knew that even if it was only one day, it would mean far more than that. Adrian Cole was a man who rarely doubted himself. In business, he made decisions with precision, and once his mind was set, nothing could shake it. But that evening, as he drove home in his sleek black car, he found himself second-guessing the choice he had just made. He had agreed to attend a school event, not for a relative, not for a friend's child, but for a little girl he had met only the day before. It wasn't something a CEO of his reputation normally did. As the city lights blurred past his window, he told himself it was simple. One afternoon, a little time, and then back to his normal life. Yet, a strange unease stayed with him. When he got home, his apartment felt unusually quiet. The modern glass walls, the spotless kitchen, the perfectly arranged bookshelves, everything was as it should be, but for the first time, he noticed how empty it all was. He poured himself a glass of water, sat on the couch, and found his thoughts drifting back to Lily. He remembered the way she had hugged her teddy bear while speaking about Family Day. The way her voice had carried both excitement and fear, as if she was afraid he would change his mind at any second. He didn't want to disappoint her, but he also couldn't ignore the voice in his head telling him this wasn't his responsibility. He was not a father. He didn't know how to read stories to children or join in silly games without feeling out of place, and he certainly wasn't used to being needed. Still, curiosity began to grow. Curiosity about what it would be like to step into her world, even for a day. The next morning, he woke earlier than usual, his mind already running through the day ahead. His assistant, Claire, noticed his distracted mood during their morning briefing. "Is something wrong, sir?" she asked as they reviewed his calendar. "No," he said quickly, then paused. "Actually, clear my schedule tomorrow afternoon." Claire blinked in surprise. "All of it?" "Yes." She hesitated. "May I ask why?" Adrian's lips twitched into a faint, almost reluctant smile. "I have an appointment at an elementary school." Claire looked at him as if she wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. "An elementary school?" "Yes." "Don't look so shocked," he said, picking up his coffee. "It's for a Family Day event. I'm helping someone." Her surprise softened into something else, a small smile of understanding. "That sounds nice." He ignored the comment and moved on to business matters, but deep down he wondered if nice was the right word. Later that afternoon, as he stepped into the lobby, he saw Lily waiting again, swinging her legs from the bench. When she spotted him, she hopped down and ran over. "You're really coming tomorrow?" she asked, her eyes wide. "Yes," he said simply. Her grin was so bright it made him feel oddly warm inside. "Then you have to know the rules." "Rules?" "Yes." She counted on her fingers. "Number 1, you can't be on your phone during the games. Number 2, you have to cheer for me even if I'm slow. Number 3, you have to smile." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Smile?" "Yes," she said firmly. "You look scary when you don't. My teacher might think you're mad at someone." He gave a small chuckle which made her eyes widen. "Oh," she said softly. "You can smile." He didn't reply, but a part of him felt strangely proud that she had noticed. That night, Adrian stood in front of his wardrobe, staring at rows of crisp suits. None of them felt right for a school event. After a moment, he pulled out a simple button-down shirt and dark jeans. He hadn't worn jeans in months, maybe years. He shook his head at himself. It was ridiculous. He was preparing more for this than he had for certain business dinners. But still, he laid the clothes neatly aside, ready for the morning. The day of Family Day arrived with bright sunshine and a gentle breeze. Adrian arrived at the school early, walking past a colorful playground where children's laughter filled the air. It was a sound so different from the constant hum of office life that he slowed his steps, taking it in. Inside the classroom, Lily was already there, her braids tied with matching ribbons. When she saw him at the door, she froze for a second, then broke into a huge smile and waved. "You came!" she said, running over to take his hand. "You didn't think I'd break the rules already, did you?" he asked, remembering her list from yesterday. She shook her head, her grip on his hand tightening as she led him inside. The room was filled with small desks, colorful drawings on the walls, and the smell of crayons and paper. Parents stood in small groups, talking quietly while their children clung to them excitedly. Adrian noticed a few curious glances in his direction. Some parents seemed to recognize him, their expressions flickering between surprise and uncertainty. But Lily didn't notice. She was too busy pulling him toward a table where her friends were sitting. "This is my dad for today," she announced proudly. For a moment, Adrian felt the weight of those words. He wasn't her father, But for today, she had chosen him for that role. And whether he liked it or not, that meant something. The teacher clapped, her hands to get everyone's attention. "All right, everyone, let's start with our welcome song." Adrian watched as the children lined up, Lily standing front and center. She glanced back at him once just to check if he was watching, and when she saw that he was, her shoulders straightened. As the song began, he felt his earlier reluctance fading, replaced by something unexpected, a quiet, growing sense of responsibility. He wasn't just a visitor here. For this afternoon, he was someone's support, someone's reason to smile, and though he didn't fully understand it yet, that was starting to matter to him more than he had planned. The classroom buzzed with excitement. Small voices filled the air, some giggling, others calling out to their parents. The walls were bright with colorful drawings, rainbows, houses, animals, and the smell of paper and crayons mixed with the faint scent of cookies from the refreshment table at the back. Adrian Cole stood slightly apart from the other adults at first, his tall frame and neatly pressed shirt making him look like he had stepped out of a different world. But Lily's small hand in his made him feel strangely grounded, as if he belonged here, even if just for a day. "Come on," she whispered, tugging him forward. "You have to sit with me." He followed her to a row of tiny chairs arranged for the children and their parents. Sitting down felt awkward. His knees almost touched his chest, but Lily seemed so pleased that he didn't complain. She sat beside him, her teddy bear propped on her lap as though it, too, was part of the event. The teacher, a cheerful woman with short hair and kind eyes, welcomed everyone. "Thank you for coming to our family day. We have a fun program planned. Songs, games, story time, and of course snacks at the end. We want to celebrate the love and support that families give." At that, Adrian noticed Lily's smile falter for just a second. But then she straightened and looked up at him. He gave her a small nod and her smile returned. The first activity was a welcome song. The children stood in a semicircle while the parents sat in the front row. Lily stood proudly near the center, glancing at Adrian every few seconds as if to make sure he was watching. When the music started, her voice joined the others, soft but sure. Adrian had heard countless speeches in boardrooms, but there was something about this small voice singing for him that made his chest feel unexpectedly tight. The song ended with applause, and Lily ran back to him, cheeks flushed. "Did you like it?" "I did," he said honestly. "You sang very well," she grinned. "I was singing extra loud so you could hear." Next came the games. The first was a relay race. Children and their parents had to work together to carry a small ball. On a spoon without dropping it, Adrian wasn't used to this kind of activity. He was more at home negotiating business deals than balancing plastic balls, but Lily's excitement was contagious. She handed him the spoon with the ball already on it. "You go first, then you give it to me." The whistle blew, and Adrian found himself running, carefully, across the classroom, his long strides earning a few amused chuckles from the other parents. He handed the spoon to Lily, and she took off, her braids bouncing. When they reached the finish line together, Lily laughed so hard she nearly dropped the spoon. "We didn't win, but we didn't lose either," she declared proudly. "That sounds fair," Adrian replied, finding himself smiling more than he had in weeks. The second game was building towers from wooden blocks. The tallest tower in 3 minutes would win. Lily's hands were quick, stacking blocks with focus, while Adrian tried to keep them steady. "Careful, it's leaning," he warned. "You have to hold it straight," she said, laughing. By the time the teacher called "Stop," their tower was tall but slightly wobbly. It swayed once, and then held. Lily clapped her hands in delight. Then came story time. Parents took turns reading short picture books to the class. Adrian was handed a book about a brave little rabbit. He opened it, feeling strangely nervous. Dozens of small eyes and a few curious adult ones were fixed on him. His voice, usually used for giving commands, softened as he read. He gave the rabbit a deeper voice and the fox a sly tone, earning giggles from the children. Even the teacher raised her eyebrows in pleasant surprise. When he finished, Lily leaned closer and whispered, "You're good at that." "I suppose." "I am," he murmured, feeling an unexpected warmth in the praise. Finally, it was snack time. The children and parents sat together, sharing cookies, juice, and small sandwiches. Lily insisted Adrian try the chocolate chip cookies first. "They're the best," she said, watching him take a bite. He nodded. "Not bad," she giggled. "That means you like them." As they ate, Lily told him about her favorite subjects. In school, her friends, and how she wanted to be an artist when she grew up. Adrian listened more than he spoke, finding her chatter oddly relaxing. The event ended with group photos. Adrian stood behind Lily, resting a hand gently on her shoulder. She stood taller than usual, her smile wide and confident. As they left the classroom, she skipped along beside him. "You were the best dad for a day," she said happily. He looked down at her. "And you were the best daughter for a day." Her grin widened, but then a small shadow crossed her face. "It's too bad it's only for today." Adrian didn't answer right away. He had told himself this would be just one afternoon. But as he walked her toward the school gate, he realized something had shifted. The world of boardrooms and business deals suddenly felt quieter compared to the sound of her laughter, and for the first time in a long time, Adrian wondered if maybe, just maybe, there was room in his carefully planned life for something more. The afternoon sun was warm as Adrian and Lily stepped out of the school building. The other parents and children were leaving in pairs, laughing and chatting, their voices carrying down the street. Lily walked beside Adrian, still holding his hand like she had in the classroom. Her grip was small but firm, as if she didn't want the day to end too quickly. "That was the best family day ever," she said with a satisfied sigh. "You've been to other ones?" he asked. She nodded. "Two. But I didn't have anyone with me those times. I just sat on the bench and watched. This one was different." Adrian glanced down at her. "Because of the games?" "Because of everything," she said, swinging, her legs forward in a little skip. "The singing, the games, the snacks, and because you were there." Her words were simple, but they settled in his mind with surprising weight. He had attended countless important events in his life, dinners, galas, high-stakes meetings, but none of them had left him with this quiet sense of meaning. They stopped at the corner where Lily's mother was waiting. She was still in her work uniform, her hair pulled back neatly despite the long shift she must have had. "How was it?" she asked her daughter. "The best," Lily said instantly, bouncing on her toes. "We sang, we played, and Mr. Adrian read a story about a rabbit and a fox and everyone laughed." Her mother's eyes softened. "Sounds like you had a wonderful time." "She did," Adrian added with a small smile. Her mother nodded in thanks. "I appreciate what you did for her today." "It was no trouble," Adrian said honestly. "She's a remarkable kid." Lily beamed at the compliment, and for a moment, her mother looked at him as though trying to understand why someone like him had agreed to be part of their day. They said goodbye, and Adrian turned to walk back toward his car. But after a few steps, he glanced over his shoulder. Lily was still standing there, waving. He raised a hand in return, then got into his car. Yet somehow, driving away felt harder than he expected. The next day, Adrian was back in his usual world, meetings, phone calls, and reports. But something had changed. During a tense boardroom discussion about a potential merger, his mind drifted. He found himself remembering the way Lily had laughed when their tower of blocks almost fell, or how she had looked back at him during the welcome song to make sure he was watching. It was distracting, and yet not in a bad way. That evening, as he left the office, he noticed the small park across the street. Families were scattered across the grass, parents playing catch with their children, couples sharing snacks on benches. For some reason, he crossed the street and stood by the fence, watching. It struck him then that he had built a life that was full of achievements, but empty of these small, everyday moments. The kind that didn't make headlines or annual reports, but seemed to matter just as much. The following weekend, Adrian was walking past a bookstore when he stopped in front of the children's section. He wasn't sure what he was doing at first. It felt almost out of character. But soon he was flipping through brightly illustrated books, checking their stories. He picked one about a little girl who built a paper boat that sailed around the world. The story was simple but hopeful, and he found himself imagining reading it aloud. Without overthinking, he bought it. On Sunday afternoon, Adrian drove to the park near Lily's home. He wasn't sure if she'd be there. He hadn't told her he was coming. But he found himself scanning the playground anyway, and there she was. Lily was on the swings, her teddy bear sitting on the grass nearby, while her mother sat on a bench reading a newspaper. When Lily saw him, her face lit up instantly. "Mr. Adrian!" she called, jumping off the swing and running over. "I was in the neighborhood," he said casually, though they both knew it wasn't true. She grinned. "Did you come to play?" "Not exactly," he said, holding up the book. "I brought you something." Her eyes widened as she took it. "It's for me?" "Yes. Thought you might like it." She flipped through the pages quickly, then hugged it to her chest. "Can you read it to me?" Adrian glanced at her mother, who gave a small nod, and they found a spot under a shady tree. Lily sat cross-legged beside him, her teddy bear leaning against her side as he began reading. His voice was steady, but his mind was taking in every detail. The way she leaned closer during the exciting parts, the way her eyes followed the pictures, the way she laughed at the funny lines. When he finished, she clapped her hands softly. "That's my new favorite story." "I'm glad you like it," he said, feeling a quiet satisfaction he hadn't felt in years. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, her mother called her back for dinner. Lily stood, holding her teddy in one arm and the book in the other. "Will you come again?" she asked hopefully. Adrian hesitated, not because he didn't want to, but because he realized that each time he said yes, it became harder to imagine saying no. "We'll see," he said with a small smile. "But I'll keep the rules in mind," she laughed. "No phone, cheer for me, and smile." Exactly. As he walked back to his car, Adrian realized those rules weren't just for family day. They were something he might start carrying into his own life. And somehow, that thought didn't feel strange at all. The days after their meeting in the park passed quickly, yet Adrian found himself thinking about Lily more than he cared to admit. He told himself it was because she was different from most people he met. Honest, open, and free of any hidden agenda. But the truth was simpler. She made him feel human in a way that boardrooms and luxury offices never could. It had been almost 2 weeks since Family Day when his assistant, Claire, placed a thick folder on his desk. "Your schedule for the next month," she said. "There's a conference in Singapore, 3 days long, starting next week." Adrian scanned the paper and nodded, but his attention caught on the dates. The trip would take him away for almost a month in total, with meetings in other cities immediately after. He wouldn't be in the country again until well into the next month. He leaned back in his chair, a small frown forming. He didn't owe Lily anything. They hadn't made plans. And yet, he thought about the way her face lit up whenever she saw him, and how she had asked, "Will you come again?" in the park. This time, he didn't want her waiting without knowing. That Saturday, Adrian drove to the park again. The late afternoon sun painted the grass in shades of gold, and the air was filled with the sounds of children playing. He spotted Lily on the slide, her braids swinging as she came down with a laugh. When she noticed him, she jumped up. "Mr. Adrian, you came!" He smiled, though it felt heavier than before. "Yes, I wanted to talk to you." She ran over, her teddy bear tucked under one arm. "Is it about a new book?" "Not exactly," he said, walking toward a bench under a tree. She followed, sitting beside him. "I have to go away for work," he explained gently. "I'll be traveling to other countries. I'll be gone for a few weeks." Her smile faded. "A few weeks? That's a long time." "It is," he admitted. "But I wanted to tell you so you wouldn't wonder where I was." Lily looked down at her teddy bear, running her fingers over its worn fabric. "Will you come back?" "Of course," he said quickly. "I'll come back. But I won't be able to see you until after the trip." She nodded slowly, but the disappointment was clear in her small face. "It's okay. I understand. My mom says grown-ups have to work." Adrian felt a pinch in his chest at her calm acceptance. Children her age weren't supposed to be so used to people leaving. To lighten the mood, he reached into the bag he had brought and pulled out a small wrapped package. "I got you something to read while I'm away." Her eyes brightened as she took it and carefully opened the wrapping. Inside was a short chapter book with colorful illustrations about a fox who travels far but always finds his way home. "It's like you," she said softly. "You're going far away, but you'll come back." "Exactly," he said with a small smile. "And when I do, you can tell me which part you liked best." She hugged the book to her chest, but her voice was quiet when she spoke. "I'll miss you." Adrian wasn't used to hearing those words. In his world, people valued his time, his decisions, his influence, but not his absence. Hearing a small voice say it so plainly felt different. "I'll miss you too, Lily," he said honestly. They spent the rest of the afternoon in the park. Lily insisted on showing him how high she could swing, how fast she could go down the slide, and how she could balance on the edge of the sandbox without falling. He watched it all, laughing at her small triumphs, but there was a quiet heaviness in the air. Both of them knew they wouldn't see each other for a while. As the sun dipped lower, her mother called her over. "Time to go, Lily." Lily looked at Adrian for a moment, as if trying to memorize him. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him in a quick but tight hug. "Goodbye, Mr. Adrian." "Goodbye, Lily," he said, resting a hand on her shoulder. "And remember, I'll be back." She nodded, then turned and ran to her mother, waving over her shoulder until they disappeared down the path. That night, Adrian sat in his apartment, staring out at the city skyline. The glass walls framed a view of glittering lights, but it all felt strangely empty. He realized that somewhere between the first time Lily had spoken to him in the lobby and now, she had become more than just a favor he had done for a stranger's child. She had, in her own quiet way, become a part of his life. And as he packed his suitcase for the long trip ahead, he found himself slipping a postcard into his briefcase. It was blank now, but he planned to write to her from the other side of the world, something to remind her that he hadn't forgotten, because deep down, he knew that this goodbye, even if only temporary, hurt far more than he expected. 3 weeks had passed since Adrian last saw Lily. The days in Singapore had been full of conferences, formal dinners, and endless meetings. Even when he returned to his hotel at night, his mind didn't rest. It wandered back to a little girl with bright eyes and a worn teddy bear. Almost every evening, he pulled out the postcard he had packed before leaving. He had written to her from the first city he visited. The card had a picture of a tall tower surrounded by gardens. His message was simple. "Hello, Lily. I hope you are reading the Fox book. I will be back soon. Mr. Adrian." He didn't know if her mother had shown it to her yet, but the thought of her reading it made the distance feel smaller. By the time his plane landed back home, Adrian was exhausted but strangely eager. Instead of going straight to his apartment, he found himself driving toward the park. It was late afternoon and the place was busy. Children were running across the grass, parents were chatting on benches, and the air was filled with laughter. His eyes scanned the playground automatically, and then he saw her. Lily was at the swings, pushing herself slowly back and forth. Her teddy bear was tucked into the swing beside her. She looked a little taller, or maybe it was just the way the sunlight caught her face. When she spotted him, her eyes widened. In the next second, she jumped off the swing and ran toward him. "Mr. Adrian?" He crouched down as she threw her arms around his neck. The hug was tight and warm, as if she wanted to make sure he was really there. "You came back," she said breathlessly. "I told you I would," he said with a smile. "Did you finish the Fox book?" Her smile grew wide. "Yes. And I like the part where the fox finds the way home even when it rains." Adrian laughed. "That was my favorite, too." They sat on a bench while Lily told him everything that had happened while he was away. How her class planted flowers in the school garden, how she made a drawing of her pretend dad for art class, and how she had been practicing skipping rope. Adrian listened, genuinely interested in every word. He realized how rare it was for him to just listen without checking his watch or thinking about the next task. With Lily, there was no rush. After a while, her mother approached. She looked a little surprised to see Adrian, but smiled politely. "You're back." "Yes," Adrian said. "And I was hoping, if you're comfortable, that I could take Lily for ice cream. Just to catch up." Her mother hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but be back before dinner." They walked together to a small shop near the park. Lily pressed her face to the glass display, eyes wide at the colors of the flavors. "2 scoops of chocolate," she declared confidently. "Same for me," Adrian said. They sat at a small table outside. Lily's feet dangled above the ground as she ate, but she kept looking at him with the same bright smile. "I'm glad you came back," she said again. "I'm glad too," Adrian admitted. "You know, I had a lot of work when I was away, but I still thought about you. I even sent you a postcard." Her face lit up. "I got it. Mom put it on the fridge. I showed it to my teacher." Something warm settled in Adrian's chest. It had been years since he'd written to anyone just because he cared. After ice cream, they strolled back to the park. The sun was beginning to set, and the sky was painted with shades of pink and gold. Lily picked a small yellow flower from the grass and handed it to him. "For you. So you remember me even if you go far again." Adrian looked at the tiny flower in his palm. "Thank you, but I think I'd remember you even without it." They sat quietly for a few moments, watching the other children play. Then Lily asked softly, "Will you come again next week?" He didn't even hesitate. "Yes, and the week after. As long as you want me to." Her face broke into the happiest smile he had ever seen. "I want you to come forever." Later, as he walked back to his car, Adrian realized how much had changed in just a short time. When Lily first approached him in the lobby that day, he had seen it as an interruption, something unusual but temporary. Now it felt like something permanent. In his phone, he set a reminder for next Saturday. Park with Lily, 3 p.m. For the first time in years, his schedule wasn't just filled with meetings and flights. It had something better, a place for someone who had quietly become family. And as the evening breeze carried the sounds of laughter through the park, Adrian knew this wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of something new,